Yeah.
Alright, guys, what's up? Welcome to another edition of the Good Taste Podcast.
Podcast.
Before we get to the topic, I just finally saw Corey Margera on a podcast video called what's it called? The Truth, the
The
Truth
Factual
Podcast.
Truth, the
Yes,
Factual Truth Podcast or something.
good
Yeah,
statement.
Yeah.
Good statement. I can say.
yeah, yeah, y'all want to introduce yourselves?
This is Havoc Kingslayer 921 here, aka that guy who was called Trover, Trevor, whatever you remember me better as, whoever's watching this.
Trevor Belmont.
Trevor off topic.
But
Yes.
yeah, continue. Who else wants to introduce themselves?
Want me to introduce myself?
Yeah,
All right, guys. Jerry Ramirez here.
Joel Ranter here, just being crazy as ever, I guess.
yep, and today we're going to be reviewing WrestleMania 7, 8, and 9.
Oh my God.
But 7,
So
we'll start
hard.
off. Hey, we're going to start off pretty good, though, where we are. But WrestleMania 7.
One match show, if you ask me.
What? Didn't this show also have Randy Savage versus Ultimate Warrior, if I'm not mistaken?
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, what about Hulk Hogan versus Sergeant Slaughter?
Not really a good match. Rather forgettable.
No, I thought it was a pretty good show. At least, we had two amazing matches with Hulk Hogan versus Sergeant Slaughter and Ultimate Warrior versus Randy Savage. And I thought those were some pretty fun matches. And this was also even though it wasn't really a good match, this was the debut of the Undertaker's streak. This was the beginning of the streak. So this does
Want to
mark
know?
this does mark a very important part in WrestleMania history.
The Undertaker.
Though Undertaker's matches don't really start to get good until 14, where he fights Kane. But we'll get to that when we get to that. But most of these matches were just to yeah. And most of his matches before them were just okay to
What about the
bad.
classic match, the Mountie versus Tito Santana?
Mm,
I was trolling.
Yeah, I know.
or how about the classic
My
Legion of Doom
God.
and Power and Glory match?
Yeah, and this was the last WrestleMania where the Hart Foundation actually had a match, where Brett and Jim
It's a
had a
tag team.
match together. Every other WrestleMania, Brett was just a lone wolf, pretty
Yeah,
much.
and that tag match was just meh.
Yeah, it was a mess.
Just meh.
Yeah,
They're trying to
nothing
get
too
the Nasty
special.
Boys, we expect.
The Snuka
And
match between Taker was also a pretty trash.
yeah, I mean the only thing that's remembered for is being the first Undertaker streak match. That is all.
New WrestleMania match will be Tamina Snuka versus The Undertaker.
But some of these matches were a little bit better. You know,
Yeah,
I
a
mean,
lot better.
so I would say it's a lot better than stuff like 4 and 6, and
But that's not saying much.
yeah, but it's mostly just a 2-match show.
One match for me personally, going by the quality of the match. I don't really care what drew the event.
Well, I think they both were
You
good
know, it
matches,
was going to
but
be in a stadium at that time.
yeah.
How many stars you give it for the match? 5 stars?
Are you talking about what match are you talking about?
The one you mentioned there.
Oh, I'd give it a 4 out of 10, I guess. Warrior and Savage easily being a 10 for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying that just because it had an amazing moment to me. It was a great match for that matter, just in general. Just easily Warriors' best match.
Yeah. But anything else anyone want to say about WrestleMania 7?
The WrestleMania had the Nasty Boys, I guess. I don't know. Hulk Hogan's
Yeah.
buddies.
We can just move on to 8,
Yeah, move on to 8.
Now, WrestleMania 8 was amazing. One of the most underrated WrestleManias of all time.
I have to agree. We started off pretty decent with Shawn Michaels versus Tito Santana, and even though it was a short match for what it was, I do wish it was a little bit longer, at least 8 minutes. But
There was only about, like 3 or 4 matches that weren't really, good. Half of them being that because they were really short.
yeah, but Undertaker versus Jake Roberts, it was all right for what it was, in my opinion. I would
Yeah.
say it's at least 3 stars.
And this
Oh,
is where you can pretty much run in circles about what was match of the night, whether you want to go with the Intercontinental Championship match or the WWF World Heavyweight Championship match. And you can pretty much go in circles about which match was better.
yeah, but Bret Hart versus Roddy Piper and Randy Savage versus Ric Flair were some amazing matches.
Oh,
Some
yeah.
of the best
The main
WrestleMania
event
matches
was
of all
disappointing.
time.
The
And
main
then the
event
main
was
event, on the
disappointing.
other hand, was garbage.
Yeah, Hulk Hogan
Disappointing.
versus Sid Justice, that was one of the Hulkster's worst matches, honestly.
Main event wise.
Yeah, main event, even if they put in the mid card, it still would have been bad. The only good thing about this match was the Ultimate Warrior's return. If it weren't for the Ultimate Warrior's return, nobody would care.
People like to say how bad Roman and Triple H was at the main event of WrestleMania 32. That match is literally Michaels and Taker WrestleMania 25 compared to Hogan versus Sid Justice. Literally
Are you serious, bro?
literally the worst main event at WrestleMania. Period. I will argue this.
I actually have to agree. I have to agree here.
No match has ever been botched so badly, from run-ins to returns and other things like that, have ever been so poorly put together. And the fact that this match wasn't even longer than the title match. It's another Mania where the last match that's supposed to be the main event, at least, isn't even the longest match on the show.
I mean, it's only the third longest.
Heck, the Intercontinental Championship match was longer than the main event. Well, unless you want to go with the argument that the show was promoted as a double main event.
I mean, they should have pushed Randy Savage versus Ric Flair and Bret Hart versus Roddy Piper more.
Yeah, that
That's
would have
what
been a
they
good
should
main
have put.
event.
If those two were the main events, and Ultimate Warrior turned, that he could have still returned in the show and in the match, but make it more like a mid card match. That, and at this time, this was kind of the beginning of people kind of getting tired of seeing Hulk Hogan all the time.
Yeah, and then he went to WCW and revived his whole career.
Yeah, pretty
As
much.
Hulk Hogan to heel.
Yeah, that was.
Now we get to WrestleMania 9. So we get to WrestleMania 9 now.
Yeah, might as well.
Okay, let's just get the pain over. Let's just get the pain done and over with, and talk about
Worst
the
WrestleMania of
number
all
one.
time. I dare you to argue this. Worse than WrestleMania 11. Worse than WrestleMania 29. Worse than WrestleMania 27.
27.
Worse than 32. Worse than 2. Worse than 4. Worse than any Mania you could put up against it. People always like to say WrestleMania 11 was the worst WrestleMania. No, it really wasn't.
It was a good match, but still we're defeating Mr. Perfect.
Okay.
See, with WrestleMania 11, at the very least, had one good match. 9 had none. The first 2 matches were decent. Then it fell after that. Oh, and what do you know? This is another Mania where the longest match isn't the main event. Literally, the first match of the show. 18 minutes. The main event, supposedly not including the Hogan and Yoko match. We're not talking about that match.
That was 22 seconds.
Minutes. Oh, yeah, 20 seconds. Yeah. If I said anything else, my mistake. But yeah, every other match on the show was terrible. Worst match of the whole like show, other than like the Hogan and Yoko match, was easily Taker and Giant Gonzalez match.
What about Lex Luger defeating Mr. Perfect?
What a joke.
I know, right? Let's see if anyone's.
Mr. Perfect could literally run circles around Lex Luger, who was like, even though I like Roman, but he was kind of like Roman before Roman existed, except Roman actually has talent and can actually move. Luger could do nothing in the ring, could never cut a good promo other than, I don't know! Which, there's a reason why that's a meme, because that's how great his promos are.
Yeah,
You know,
and
like, I kind of lost energy to rant on Luger, because, like, I've done it, like, in the past. You could never, like, find it now, so, if anyone wants to do it, they can go ahead and do so. Right.
sorry, I had to get my scream out, but let's get the positives out of the way. Jim Ross and Randy Savage, for what it was, even though the show was bad, they did a pretty decent commentary. Not the best commentary of all time, but it was decent. I liked the setting at Caesar's Palace. You know, I thought it was
Still, the commentary for the show was still better than anything WWE can put out these days.
Yeah.
yeah, true.
Corey Graves saying,
Yep.
Tony Young, do the improvs?
And I thought the setting at Caesar's Palace was pretty cool, but I really wish they saved that one for 10 because one, that was a way better Mania, and two, that was the 10th anniversary of Wrestlemania. That was the 10th Wrestlemania, so it would make more sense to save it for that one than this one, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know,
This is just more of one of those manias of, we actually thought this was a good idea.
yeah, and
You know, I might as well just do the Luger rant. Lex Luger was trash. He was so bad that the entire locker room nearly walked down when he nearly beat Yoko for the belt. That should tell you how terrible he is. The fact that he even got to be in the same ring as Mr. Perfect is a joke within itself. Mr. Perfect could literally destroy him in an actual wrestling match too, because Mr. Perfect is an actual wrestler. Lex Luger is trash. I'm so glad that this man never actually was anything in WWE. And the fact that he's an NWO member is just a joke within itself, showing you the NWO had no standards when it came to having members in the group.
my life was ruined because of Lex Luger, but okay. And I guess the one more positive, the only other positive that the two opening matches with Shawn
How
Michaels.
about Razor Ramon defeating Shawn Michaels in the ladder match?
No, that was 10. We'll do that one tomorrow, but
We know, we really want to talk about a good Mania.
we know, man, we know. But Tatanka versus Shawn Michaels was an okay match, and so was the Sound Brothers versus Ted Dreams. Those were a pretty good start, but that's where the positives end. Doink the
Literally.
Clown versus Crush, terrible match. Razor Ramon versus Bob Backlund, way
Free-
too.
The entrances were literally longer than the whole match.
The match was 3 minutes and
Yeah,
45
that
seconds.
was sad. You know, Money Inc. versus the
PG
Mega
BS,
Maniacs. What a
Utterly
disappointment.
pointless.
Yeah, what a disappointment of a match. You know, this, like, Hulk Hogan came back after being gone for pretty much all of 1992, almost, and not doing much. But he comes back, teams up with Brutus Beefcake, has a feud with Money Inc., you know, with IRS and Ted DiBiase. And how does this match end? They lose. Not only do they lose
By DQ.
by DQ. And they don't even get the WrestleMania tag team title.
Heck,
Like,
I'd rather have Hogan become the tag champion than winning the WWF championship for no reason. God, I hated that moment, like, so much. And I love Hulk Hogan, by the way. Like, don't get this twisted. I love Hulk Hogan as a wrestler, of course, just as much as the next guy. But, like, in hindsight, was this really, like, was there really any point to him winning the title, just coming in the most ego-stroking way? Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Oh, and just real quick, the next match was trash. Moving on. Mr.
Oh,
Perfect
yeah,
couldn't
Luger
even
versus
carry
Mr.
Luger.
Perfect. Oh, yeah, this was just... No. Like, Mr. Perfect put on a decent show for what he had, but Lex Luger just ruined the match. Mr. Perfect should have fought somebody else. And, he should have fought The Undertaker. That would have been a better match.
Especially the match we got.
Yeah, the fucking Undertaker match, the one we're gonna get onto. This is, hands down, without a shadow of a doubt, the worst. One of the worst WrestleMania matches, and the worst Undertaker match of all time.
The
Now,
Giant Gonzalez was like the Great Khali of the 90s.
pretty much.
The only difference is that Gonzalez actually could move if you watched his stuff in WCW.
Well said, Jordan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Also, it's definitely the third worst
Gonzalez is
Mania
better.
match
Big
of all
rest in
time.
peace.
Worst, I'd say the Lawler Michael Cole match and the Goldberg and Brock Lesnar match at WrestleMania 20 are the two worst matches.
Yeah, the
Bret
top
Hart,
WrestleMania's
Vince
ever
McMahon.
given us.
Yeah, those are
Bret
definitely
Hart,
in the
Vince
top
McMahon.
three.
That match was really nothing. It was just more than we expected it to be nothing.
What about that
There
Bret
are way
Hart,
worse
Vince
Mania
McMahon
matches.
he
As I
just
said, there's worse.
described it, bruh.
I understand.
I'm sorry, but again, but I would say this is probably the second worst WrestleMania match of all time, with Lawler versus Michael Cole being the worst, and Goldberg versus Brock being probably
I'd
number
rather have
three.
Jerry Lawler had just won the Royal Rumble and fight John Cena in the main event for the WWE Championship than seeing Cole and Lawler. I am serious. At least that would have
Jerry
been
Lawler win the
funny.
WWE title.
That would have at least been funny if it happened.
The only good thing about that match was Stone Cold as referee, but even that couldn't save it. But
Exactly.
let's stay on topic. Now we're at the main event now. Yokozuna versus Bret
Bret
Hart.
Hart.
This was a terrible match too. Probably one of Bret's worst matches. I mean, and when you put someone like Mr. Perfect and Bret Hart in terrible matches, then
You're doing something wrong, man. You're doing something wrong.
Yeah, and like, just Bret Hart was the champion at the time, and the way, like, this is why a lot of people don't like Hulk Hogan, and I'm not talking about as a wrestler, I'm talking about as a person, because he does stuff like this. Like, if it was just like Yokozuna versus Bret Hart, and Bret Hart managed to keep the title, or Yokozuna won fair and square, and it just ended there, those 22 seconds could have been put in, Bret losing, but nope, or Bret winning, or whatever, but nope. He got screwed over worse than he got screwed over at Survivor Series 97, and that's just a fact, people.
Yeah.
I
Thankfully,
don't
the
know if
next...
I'd say it was worse than Survivor Series 97 because one's legitimate, one was an act.
Yeah, this was legitimate, too. Yeah, this was legitimate. Yeah, this
Really?
is way worse.
Was it actually?
This, at WrestleMania 9,
Yeah, was that legit?
yeah, this was a legit screw over. This was just Hulk Hogan stroking his ego because he didn't want to put over Bret Hart, and yet he's willing to put over, Billy Kidman at WCW, yet he can't put over Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels.
Oh, I can't put him over because they're
Yokozuna.
too small,
Yeah,
brother.
man.
Get out of here, Hogan, you hypocrite.
Yeah, at least Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels have muscle.
Yeah.
Billy Kidman is a scrawny
Yokozuna.
little guy. Yeah.
What is Billy Kidman doing now? Fucking WWE producer?
I
Producing
think he
porn?
died.
No, he's a WWE producer, Billy Kidman.
Who died?
Billy Kidman.
No, he's still alive.
He's still alive.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
If Billy Kidman was wrestling now, he'd probably be fighting for the WWE Championship right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, probably.
That's laughable. That's laughable.
He'd be fighting for the Universal title against Brock Lesnar.
At the main event of WrestleMania.
Yes.
Yep. Alright, so... is there anything else anyone wants to say about these WrestleManias?
Show was trash.
Well,
WrestleMania 8 was
yes.
good. 7 was just a one-match show for me.
Yeah, same here.
That's all I
Except
gotta say.
two match show
Yep.
at 7, a pretty decent show at 8, and the worst WrestleMania of all time. 0 good
In 9.
matches. Like people can say,
In
oh, they
9.
won about
I'd
11
literally
and
give
2.
WrestleMania 9 a 0 out of 10. That's how bad it is.
Yeah, 0 out of 10. Even a 0 out of 100. That shows how many good. There's like literally
None.
And there
hardly
were
any
two
redeeming
matches that
qualities.
were okay, and then it gets
Very
bodied
bad.
by bad matches and bad booking decisions.
Like this could have been a decent show, but nope,
Not
they
even.
messed it all up. So thankfully, we'll be going after WrestleMania 10, probably one of the best WrestleManias ever. In the next podcast, that we'll have to also deal with a dreadful 11.
Yeah.
But then we'll get back up from 12.
Yeah, but then we'll
12
get
and
back up.
13.
So yeah, at
12 and
least
13.
but yeah, the pain's over. I hope everyone who watched this enjoyed the podcast, and we'll see you all later.
See y'all later, folks.
Peace out.
Peace out.
Peace.
Peace.
Peace to multiple.